I never imagined that at my own son's wedding I would have to stand up and destroy someone's life right in front of 200 guests. But when the bride's father grabbed the microphone and said, "This guy is a nobody," and my Andrew turned pale and lowered his eyes, I understood. It was time to reveal the truth I had been hiding for months. I stood up, walked to the stage, took the microphone from him, and began saying something that would change everything. But for you to understand why I did it, we need to go back a few months. And before we continue, tell us which city you are from. It's important for us to know how far our stories reach. It all began on a warm May evening, when my son Andrew burst into my home with shining eyes. He was 28 and design engineer, always a serious young man. But that day he was glowing like a boy. Andrew dropped onto the couch beside me and exhaled, "Mom, I'm in love." I smiled and turned to him. "Tell me about her." Andrew took out his phone and showed me a photograph. A beautiful girl with dark hair and kind eyes looked at me from the screen. "Her name is Sophia Carter," he said. "She's 25, studying to become an architect. Oh, she's incredible. Kind, smart, funny. I want you to meet her." I saw how happy he was and my heart filled with warmth. After everything he had been through, school, work, trying to find his place in life, he had finally met someone who made him shine like this. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "Bring her over." A week later, Sophia came to our home for dinner. Modestly dressed, holding a bouquet of flowers, a shy smile on her face. She stepped inside and quietly said, "Good evening, Mrs. Lawson. Thank you for inviting me." We talked the whole evening. Sophia told us about her studies, her dream of designing beautiful buildings, and how she met Andrew in the library. He reached for a book on architecture and so did she. Their hands touched, they laughed, and that's how it all began. I liked her immediately. Genuine. Without pretense. Without the forced arrogance I sometimes saw in girls from wealthy families. But when I asked about her family, Sophia tensed a little. "My father is strict," she said softly, lowering her eyes. "Very demanding. He owns a construction company, he's used to controlling everything. My mom, she lives by his rules." I noticed a shadow in her eyes but didn't give it much thought then. I assumed it was a usual story, a strict father who wants the best for his daughter. Another month later, Andrew announced that he was going to meet Sophia's parents. I offered to go with him, but he refused. "Mom, don't. I'll handle it myself. Everything will be fine." But when he returned late that evening, his face was dark, like a stormy sky. "Well?" I asked as he walked through the door. Andrew went straight to the kitchen, poured himself water, drank it in one gulp. Then another. I stood beside him, feeling a tightening worry inside me. "Her father," he began, then stopped. He interrogated me, like I was under investigation. Worse even. I quietly took his hand. "First he asked how much I earn," Andrew continued. "Then whether I have an apartment. I told him I rent a small place, that I work as an engineer, that I plan to advance in my career. Do you know what he said?" I watched my son silently, squeezing his hand. He said, "So you have nothing and you're worth nothing. My daughter could choose anyone and she chose you. I wonder why." Andrew repeated the words with bitterness. "Mom," he looked at me as if I were trash under his shoe. I felt anger boiling inside me. How dare he speak to my son like that? Andrew was honest, hardworking, decent. Was that not enough? "And what about Sophia?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Andrew sighed heavily. She tried to stop him. She said she loved me, that she didn't care about money. But he just laughed. Said she was too young to understand life. "That love is pretty, but you can't live on it." I put my arm around my son's shoulders and pulled him close. "Andrew, if you love this girl, don't pay attention to her father," I said firmly. "You're building your life, not his." He nodded and hugged me back. "I love her, Mom. Very much. And I won't let that man ruin our relationship. We'll get through this." Back then, I still didn't know who Victor Carter truly was. I didn't know that a few months later, a chance encounter would reveal the truth that would force me to act. I didn't know that this arrogant, controlling man was hiding secrets dark enough to destroy more than one family. But even that night I felt uneasy. Something about this story was wrong. A father who humiliates his daughter's fiancé at their first meeting. A girl who fears her father and lives by his rules. A family built on fear and control. And you know what? I promise you, by the end of this story I will tell you what happened to Victor and why my decision saved not only my son but many other people. Stay to the end, you'll be shocked. For now I simply waited. And hoped that everything would somehow work out. That Victor would soften, see what a good man my Andrew was. That Sophia would persuade him. But life rarely fixes itself. Especially when you're dealing with someone who is used to buying and controlling everything around him. A meeting lay ahead of me, one that would change everything. 2 months passed. Andrew and Sophia began seeing each other more often, their relationship growing stronger. Victor no longer interrogated anyone, but every time he met my son, he looked at him with that same arrogant contempt that was impossible to ignore. Sophia apologized for her father. Andrew endured it. And I simply watched and waited. Everything changed on an ordinary Thursday. I walked into a cafe near my workplace to grab some coffee during my lunch break. I settled at a table by the window, ordered a cappuccino and a sandwich. I was scrolling through the news on my phone when suddenly I heard children laughing. I looked up and froze. At a table in the corner sat Victor. The very same Victor, the father of my son's fiancée. But he wasn't alone. Beside him sat a woman around 38, beautiful, with auburn hair pulled into a loose bun. And on either side of them were 2 children, a boy about 8 and a girl around 5. Victor leaned toward the woman and kissed her gently on the lips. A long, sincere kiss. Not polite, not formal. Then he put his arm around the boy's shoulders and said something to him. The boy laughed and shouted, "Dad, can I have more ice cream?" Dad. He called him Dad. I felt the ground slip from under my feet. My heart pounded so loudly it seemed everyone in the cafe could hear it. I quickly turned toward the window, hiding behind the menu, but I kept watching from the corner of my eye. Victor laughed. He was relaxed, carefree, nothing like the strict, domineering man I had seen in the Carter household. He stroked the girl's head, whispered something into the woman's ear. They looked like a family, a real happy family. But Victor already had a family. A wife, Helen Carter. A daughter, Sophia. A big house, a luxurious life. I sat there unable to move. Thoughts raced through my mind, each worse than the last. Maybe they were relatives, cousins. Maybe I was mistaken. But the kiss, that kiss left no doubt. Victor Carter was living a double life. I waited until they left, paid my bill, and walked out on trembling legs. All the way home I shook. I tried to calm myself, to convince myself that maybe I misunderstood something. But the image wouldn't leave my mind. His hand on her waist, the children's laughter, that look full of tenderness. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there thinking, what do I do now? Tell Andrew? But what if I was wrong? Tell Sophia? Destroy her world? Stay silent? But then my son would be stepping into a family built on lies. By morning I made a decision. I needed proof. Clear, undeniable proof. I searched online for a private detective. The first name that appeared was Raymond Adams. The reviews were good, fast, thorough, discreet. I called him that same day. We met in a small office on the edge of the city. Raymond was about 42 with sharp gray eyes and a calm way of speaking. He listened carefully without interrupting, jotting down notes in a notebook. So you want to know if Victor has a second family? He asked when I finished. Yes, I nodded. And everything else about his life. Everything he's hiding. My son is about to marry his daughter, and I need to know what kind of family he's joining. Raymond nodded. I understand. Give me 2 weeks. If there's something there, I'll find it. I handed him a photo of Victor, the first found on Sophia's social media, his office address, the name of his company. Raymond promised to keep me updated. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I kept working, smiling at Andrew, talking to Sophia, pretending everything was fine. But inside, the anxiety never left. Meanwhile, Andrew proposed to Sophia. She said yes, and they began planning the wedding. Victor, oddly enough, didn't object. In fact, he took over the entire planning process. He booked an expensive venue, invited 200 guests, paid for everything himself. If my daughter is getting married, it should be done properly, he declared at a family dinner. I sat there staring at him. This confident, authoritative man who handed out money and commands so easily. What was hiding behind that mask? Exactly 2 weeks later, Raymond Adams called me. "Margaret Lawson, we need to meet," he said bluntly. "It's urgent. I have information." I arrived at his office that same evening. Raymond sat at his desk with a thick folder in front of him. When I entered, he looked up, and in his eyes I saw something heavy. "Sit down," he said, pointing to the chair. "What I'm about to show you will shock you. Are you ready?" I nodded, though my heart was pounding wildly. Raymond Adams opened the folder and laid out photographs, documents, and printouts in front of me. I looked at them and felt my world collapse. What I learned that evening changed everything. The first photograph. Victor leaving the entrance of an ordinary apartment building on the other side of the city. Next to him, the same auburn-haired woman and 2 children. They were holding hands. The second photograph. Victor kissing the woman on the doorstep of the apartment. The third. Him playing with the children in a park. Raymond placed another document in front of me. "Her name is Veronica," he said calmly. "She's 38, works as an accountant. The children are Victor's. The boy is 8, the girl is 5. He rents an apartment for them, pays for everything, visits them 3 to 4 times a week. Veronica believes he'll divorce his wife as soon as his daughter gets married. He's been promising her that for 6 years." I couldn't say a word. I just stared at the photographs. "But that's not all," Raymond continued, pulling out another stack of papers. "Victor's company, Carter and Partners Construction, is on the brink of bankruptcy. Massive debt. Unpaid salaries. Equipment under seizure. He has been funneling money into his personal accounts for years." I raised my eyes to him. How is that possible? He's wealthy. He has a house, cars, money for the wedding." "All of that is just for show," Raymond replied. "The house is in his wife's name. The cars are leased. And the money for the wedding, most likely it's the last cash he was able to scrape together. Margaret Lawson, this man is a fraud." He laid out another document. I began reading it and felt a cold chill run through me. Victor had received a federal advance to build 120 homes for young families. He completed only 40. The rest of the money he kept. Hundreds of families were left without homes, their savings gone. A criminal case was being prepared. An arrest warrant was expected. "How much time does he have?" I whispered. "A month. Maybe 2, Raymond answered. "The investigation is collecting evidence. It's only a matter of time." I sat there in disbelief. My son was about to marry the daughter of a criminal. A man who had destroyed the lives of hundreds. A man living a double life, deceiving everyone around him. "Here are all the document copies," Raymond said, closing the folder and handing it to me. "Photos, bank statements, witness reports. Everything you need." I took the folder with trembling hands. "Thank you," I managed to say. Raymond nodded. "Good luck. And be careful. Victor is a dangerous man." I held the folder tight the whole way home, thinking, what should I do now? Tell Andrew? But the wedding was in 3 weeks. Everything was paid for, the guests invited. If I said something now, everything would crumble. Andrew would be devastated. Sophia, poor Sophia. Her world would fall apart. Maybe stay silent. Maybe it wasn't my place. Maybe they would figure it out themselves. I didn't sleep that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, going through every possibility. If I stayed silent, Andrew would become part of that family. When Victor was arrested, the scandal would engulf everyone. My son, as the son-in-law, would be suspected of involvement. His reputation, his career, everything would be at risk. If I told him now, I would destroy the wedding, their dreams, their love. I shifted between these thoughts until morning. And then I made a decision. I would wait. Wait for the moment when Victor showed his true face. When he humiliated my son publicly again. And then I would reveal the truth. Not out of revenge, but to protect. 3 weeks remained before the wedding. I started preparing. I made copies of all the documents. Printed the most important photographs. Put everything into a folder. Rehearsed in my mind what I would say if it came to it. Every day I woke with a heavy heart. I listened to Andrew excitedly talk about wedding preparations and felt everything inside me tighten. Sophia visited us, bringing invitation samples, discussing details. She was glowing with happiness. But I knew what they did not. A week before the wedding, I barely slept. Every night I tossed and turned, asking myself whether I was doing the right thing. Maybe I should tell Andrew privately? Show him the documents, let him decide. But I knew my son. He would hesitate. So, try to smooth things over. And Victor would crush him. Well, the truth had to be revealed publicly. In front of everyone. So Victor couldn't twist it, lie, or shift the blame. The night before the wedding, I sat by the window with a cup of tea watching the sunset. Everything inside me trembled. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow I would either save my son or lose him forever. But there was no choice. I could feel the storm coming. And I was ready to face it head-on. The wedding day dawned warm and sunny. The September sky was clear, as if nature itself wanted to bless the couple. I woke early, the weight in my chest still there from the night before. One thought kept circling in my mind. Today everything changes. Andrew Lawson arrived early that morning. Excited, happy, a little nervous. He kept turning in front of the mirror in his new suit, adjusting his tie, asking if everything looked right. "Mom, do you think I look okay?" he asked, turning to me. I walked over, straightened his collar, and looked into his eyes. "You look perfect, sweetheart," I said quietly. "The most handsome groom in the world." He hugged me tightly. "Thank you for always being here, Mom. I'm so happy today." I held him close and closed my eyes. In the pocket of my bag lay the folder with the documents. Heavy as a stone. I knew that in just a few hours this happiness could shatter into pieces. But I also knew I was doing this for him. For his future. The ceremony took place in St. Andrew's Chapel of the city. Sophia was stunning in her white dress, and Andrew couldn't take his eyes off her. They exchanged vows, the priest blessed them, the guests clapped and tossed rose petals. I stood aside, smiling through tears. Despite everything, it was a beautiful moment. After the ceremony, everyone headed to Riverside Country Club, a luxurious venue by the river. Victor spared no expense. A huge banquet hall with crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers everywhere, tables overflowing with exquisite dishes. 200 guests, Victor's business partners, relatives, friends. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. The newlyweds entered the hall to applause. Sophia glowed, Andrew held her hand and smiled. They opened the dance, and the entire hall watched as they twirled to the music. For a moment it seemed everything truly was wonderful. But I knew, it was the calm before the storm. The guests took their seats, dinner began. I sat next to Andrew's relatives, smiling, answering questions, but inside everything was tightening. The folder lay in my bag under the chair. I could feel its weight even without looking at it. Then the toasts began. First, one of Andrew's friends wished the couple happiness, love, health. Then a friend of Sophia's shared a touching story about their friendship. The guests laughed, clapped, raised their glasses. And then Victor stood up. He rose from the table, took the microphone, and stepped to the center of the hall. Dressed in an expensive suit, a champagne glass in his hand, he looked like a man who owned the world. Confident, authoritative, successful. "Dear guests," he began loudly, and the entire hall fell silent. "Today is a special day. My only daughter, my Princess Sophia, got married." Guests began clinking their glasses, signaling for a kiss. Victor smiled and continued. "You know, I always dreamed that my daughter would choose a worthy man. Successful, well-established, with prospects. Someone who could give her the life she's accustomed to." I felt myself tense. Andrew sat at the newlyweds' table, listening closely. Sophia squeezed his hand. "But as they say, the heart wants what it wants," Victor continued, a mocking note appearing in his voice. "Sophia could have chosen anyone. My partner's sons, successful businessmen, even that guy, what's his name, from the oil company, remember?" Some guests laughed. Victor paused, enjoying the attention. "But she chose a simple boy. An engineer. Who rents a one-bedroom place on the edge of the city and earns a salary that can't even buy a decent car." The hall laughed louder. Someone shouted something approving. Andrew paled. Sophia gripped his hand, her face twisted with pain. And Victor went on. You know what I thought when she brought him home? I thought, this guy is a loser. He has nothing, he's worth nothing. But my daughter insisted. She said she loves him. He said the word loves, with such mockery that I felt physical pain. Guests laughed. Someone clapped. Someone shook their head with a smile. I looked at Andrew. He sat with his head lowered. Tears glistened in the corners of his eyes. My son. My boy. Whom I raised alone, who achieved everything through hard work, who never hurt anyone. He sat there crying from humiliation. And something inside me snapped. I stood up. Slowly, deliberately. Reached into my bag, took out the folder. And walked across the hall toward the stage. People began turning their heads. Someone whispered. Victor continued his speech, unaware of me approaching. But what can you do if that's her choice? Let's hope love feeds them because they've got nothing else to rely on. The room erupted in laughter. I walked up to Victor and extended my hand. He turned, looked at me in surprise. Give me the microphone, I said firmly. He frowned. What do you want? Give me the microphone, I repeated louder. Now. The room went silent. Everyone watched us. Victor looked at me with disdain. The groom's mother wants to say something? He smirked. Well then go ahead. Entertain us. He handed me the microphone. I took it, turned toward the hall and took a deep breath. My name is Margaret Lawson, I am Andrew's mother. I began, my voice loud and clear. And I want to tell you the truth about the man who just humiliated my son. The hall froze. Victor turned pale. What are you? Be quiet, I cut him off. You've talked enough. Now it's my turn. I opened the folder and took out the first photograph. I lifted it high so everyone could see. This is Victor Carter with a woman named Veronica and 2 children, a boy of 8 and a girl of 5. This is his second family. A family his wife Helen Carter knows nothing about. A family he has been supporting for 6 years. The guests gasped. Someone jumped up from their seat. Helen, sitting at her table, turned white as chalk. Victor lunged toward me, but I stepped back. This is a lie, he shouted. Where did you get that? This is not a lie, I replied coldly. This is the truth you've been hiding. And this is only the beginning. I pulled out another document and raised it over my head. These are bank statements, I continued, my voice growing stronger. 4 years, Victor Carter has been funneling money from his company, Carter and Partners Construction, into his personal accounts. The company is on the brink of bankruptcy. Massive debt to employees, to banks. Equipment under seizure. Everything you see around you, this luxury, this celebration, was built on fraud. The hall exploded in whispers. People stood looking around at one another. Victor's business partners exchanged troubled glances. You're lying. Victor roared, trying to rip the microphone from my hands. This is slander. I'll sue you. I stepped back again and took out another document. And this, I said, lifting the page, is information about a federal contract. Victor Carter received an advance to build 120 homes for young families. He built only 40. He kept the rest of the money. Hundreds of families were left without homes, their savings gone. A criminal case is being prepared. An arrest warrant is expected. Now it was no longer whispers. It was shouting. Guests leapt from their seats, yelling, pointing. Someone started recording with their phone. Helen covered her face with her hands and burst into tears. Her relatives tried to comfort her. Sophia jumped up from the newlyweds table, her face twisted with horror. What? She screamed at her father. Dad, what is she saying? Tell me it's not true. Victor stumbled through the hall, his face crimson. It's all lies. This woman is insane. She's trying to ruin the wedding. But I had already taken out the photographs and was handing them to guests at the nearest tables. Here is the proof, I said into the microphone. Photos of him with his second family. Bank statements. Fraud documents. It's all here. See for yourselves. Guests snatched the photographs, passed them around. Some filmed the documents. Some cried. Some shouted. One of Victor's business partners jumped up and yelled, Carter, is this true? You took money from the company. I have millions invested. Another shouted. I put everything into your project. If the company is bankrupt, I'm ruined. Victor tried to speak, but his voice drowned in the roar of the hall. He spun around, looking for support, but everyone stared at him with hatred and disgust. Sophia pushed her way through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. Dad, she screamed. Tell me it's a lie. Tell me. Victor grabbed her shoulders. Sophia, sweetheart, it's a misunderstanding. This woman made it all up. She wants revenge because I didn't approve of your choice. But Sophia shoved him away. Don't lie to me, she sobbed. I can see it in your face. It's true. Everything she said is true. Then Helen walked up to her husband. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with fury. You have another family? She asked quietly, each word striking like a hammer. Children? 6 years. Victor tried to take her hand, but she recoiled. Helen, listen, it's not what you think. Don't you dare touch me, she screamed. Don't you dare. You lied to me. For years. While I raised our daughter, while I trusted you. She couldn't finish. She turned and ran from the hall. Her relatives rushed after her. Sophia stood in the middle of the hall, tears streaming down her face. Andrew came up to her, held her, but she was in shock. Her whole world had collapsed in minutes. Guests began rushing out. Some hurried to gather their things, some called their lawyers, some filmed everything on their phones. Victor's business partners surrounded him, demanding explanations, threatening lawsuits. Victor stood in the center of the chaos, confused, defeated. All his confidence, all his power evaporated. He was just a pathetic man caught in his lies. I stood aside, still holding the folder. My hands trembled. I had done it. I had destroyed the wedding. Destroyed a family. But I knew I had no choice. Andrew led Sophia to a table, helped her sit, brought her water. Then he slowly turned toward me. Our eyes met across the hall. And in his gaze I saw pain. Confusion. Betrayal. He didn't come to me. He just turned away and leaned toward Sophia again. Guests left in complete silence. No one laughed anymore, no clinking glasses. The wedding had turned into a funeral. Servers moved nervously between the tables. Musicians packed their instruments. I stood by the exit watching everything fall apart. Victor left surrounded by lawyers and enraged partners. Helen Carter left with relatives, sobbing in the car. Sophia and Andrew stayed alone in the empty hall. Two people whose wedding had become a nightmare. I walked up to them. Andrew, I began. He lifted his eyes to me. Pulled. Distant. Don't, he said quietly. Just leave. Sweetheart, I did this for you. Leave, Mom, he repeated, his voice shaking. Please. Sophia wept into his shoulder. She didn't even look at me. I turned and walked out of the hall. Outside it was dark and cold. I got into a taxi and stared out the window the whole way home, feeling everything inside me ache. I had saved my son from a future disaster. But he didn't understand that. Not yet. I came home, lay down, closed my eyes. I knew difficult days were ahead. His silence. His resentment. Maybe I had lost him forever. But I had done what I had to do. After that night came silence. A terrifying, suffocating silence that lasted for weeks. Andrew didn't call. Didn't answer messages. Didn't come. I tried to reach him. Texted, called, went to his home. But the door remained closed. Once I stood outside for half an hour, begging him to open to talk. He stayed silent. I went home and cried. For the first time in years, I felt completely alone. My only son, whom I raised by myself, for whom I sacrificed everything, now didn't want to see me. At night I lay awake replaying that scene at the wedding. Maybe I had done the wrong thing. Maybe I should have told Andrew privately, shown him the documents, let him decide. Maybe I had ruined his life instead of saving it. But then I remembered Victor's face, his mocking laughter, the tears in Andrew's eyes. I remembered the documents, hundreds of families deceived, the second family, the fraud. And I understood. If I had stayed silent, my son would have become part of all that. When Victor was eventually arrested, Andrew would be dragged into the scandal. His name, his reputation, everything would be at risk. I did what I had to. But the price was unbearably high. Meanwhile, the Carter family was falling apart before everyone's eyes. I learned about it from the news and from people we knew. Helen Carter, Victor's wife, filed for divorce the very next day after the wedding. She took all the documents for the house, the cars, the accounts, and moved in with her sister along with Sophia. Lawyers had already started dividing the property. Helen demanded everything, as compensation for years of lies. Sophia, according to a friend I met by chance at a store, was in shock. She wouldn't leave her room, hardly ate, cried for days. Her whole world had collapsed. The father she loved and admired turned out to be a liar, a fraud, a criminal. The family she believed was strong had fallen apart. The wedding she dreamed of had become a nightmare. Andrew stayed by her side. He visited every day, supporting her however he could. But he himself was shattered. Victor disappeared. He stopped coming to the office, didn't answer calls, hid from the press. Reporters surrounded his house, but he never came out. His company, Carter and Partners Construction, declared bankruptcy. Employees were left without paychecks. Partners lost millions. The defrauded homeowners, the very same hundreds of families waiting for homes, held protests demanding justice. The story hit the news. Major construction scandal. Businessmen stole millions, hundreds of families left homeless, developers' double life exposed. Victor's photograph was on the front pages. I watched all of it and felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. Relief, because the truth had finally come out. Guilt, because I was the one who set everything in motion. 2 months passed. 2 months of silence between me and Andrew. 2 months of waking up with pain and going to sleep with the same thought. Would he ever come back to me? And then one November evening, as I sat watching TV with a cup of tea, I saw what I had been waiting for. A news report appeared on the screen. The camera showed the courthouse, a crowd of reporters, police officers. And then Victor. He was being led away in handcuffs. His face was gray, gaunt. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by a simple jacket. His eyes were empty, lifeless. The narrator announced. Earlier this morning, the owner of the construction company Carter and Partners Construction, Victor Carter, was taken into custody. He has been charged with large-scale fraud, misappropriation of federal funds, and tax evasion. According to investigators, the damage exceeds over $20 million. More than 200 families have been identified as victims. I stared at the screen, unable to look away. Victor, who only 2 months ago stood on a stage humiliating my son, was now humiliated himself. Publicly. In front of the entire country. The camera zoomed in on his face. And I saw something there I had never seen before. Fear. Real raw fear. A week later, a detective called me. He introduced himself, said he was working on Carter's case, and asked me to come in to give a statement. "You possess important information, Margaret Lawson," he said calmly. "We need your testimony and the documents you have." I agreed. On the scheduled day, I arrived at the district attorney's office. I was taken to a room where a 50-year-old investigator sat behind a desk piled with folders. "Thank you for coming," he said, motioning to the chair. "I know this isn't easy." I sat down and took out my folder, the same one I had shown at the wedding. "Here is everything I have," I said. Photographs, bank statements, information about the second family, proof of fraud. A private investigator I hired gathered it all. The detective reviewed the documents carefully, taking notes, asking questions. I answered as honestly and thoroughly as I could. "You understand that you may have to testify in court?" he asked, looking up. "Yes," I nodded. "I'm ready. It will be a public trial. There will be a lot of press. The defense may challenge you, even attack you." "I understand," I replied firmly. "But the truth has to prevail. Those people he deceived deserve justice." He nodded with respect. "Thank you, Mrs. Lawson. Your testimony is extremely important." When I left the building, a small group of people, about 10, waited outside. Women, men, an elderly couple. They approached me. "Are you Margaret Lawson?" "The groom's mother?" one woman asked. I stopped wary. "Yes, that's me." The woman stepped closer, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you for having the courage to speak the truth. We were victims of Carter. We invested all our money into his project. Sold our apartments, took out loans. We were promised homes. Instead, we were left with nothing. We waited for 2 years before learning he stole everything." A man added, "I have 2 kids. We lived with my parents while saving for a home. We gave Carter everything. Now we're back in a 1-bedroom place with 5 people. The kids sleep on the floor." An elderly woman approached, took my hands. "God bless you, dear," she whispered. "You did what no one else dared. You gave us a chance at justice." I stood before them, a lump rising in my throat. These people had lost everything because of Victor. Their lives were destroyed by his greed and lies. I just couldn't stay silent. I managed through tears. "Not after I learned the truth." "And we're grateful," the man said. "If not for you, he'd still be stealing. Still hiding. Still funneling money overseas. Now he'll face justice." We spoke for a few minutes. They told their stories, painful, heartbreaking. Families left homeless. Children with nowhere to sleep. Elderly people who lost their last savings. When I left, they waved to me. And I realized I had done the right thing. Despite the pain. Despite my son's silence. Despite everything, I had done the right thing. But Andrew still didn't call. The trial began in late January. The courtroom was packed. Victims, journalists, attorneys, onlookers. I sat among the witnesses and watched as Victor was brought in. He had changed drastically. He had lost weight, aged, his face gray and hollow. His confidence, his arrogance, gone. He was a broken man who understood his life was over. The trial lasted several weeks. Witnesses testified one after another. Victims told their stories. Business partners described the missing money. Accountants spoke of forged documents and schemes. When it was my turn, I walked to the stand. The courtroom fell silent. Everyone knew who I was, the woman who had exposed Victor at her own son's wedding. I told them how I had accidentally seen him with the second family, how I hired an investigator, how I learned the truth, and how I chose to reveal it publicly to protect my son from disaster. Victor Carter's attorney tried to discredit me, throwing tricky questions my way. "You acted out of spite, didn't you? Because Victor Carter didn't approve of your son." I looked him straight in the eyes. "I acted out of love for my son," I answered firmly. "I could not allow him to enter the family of a criminal. If Victor Carter were an honest man, I would have had no reason to reveal anything. But he lied to everyone, his wife, his daughter, his partners, the homeowners. And I simply told the truth." The courtroom burst into applause. The judge called for order, but I saw him nod slightly in approval. At the end of February, the verdict was delivered. The judge read it in a steady, calm voice. To find Victor Carter guilty of large-scale fraud, misappropriation of federal funds, and tax evasion. To sentence him to 12 years in a federal correctional facility, with asset confiscation and restitution payments to the victims. Victor sat with his head lowered. He did not cry, did not shout. He simply sat there, defeated, hollow. The victims embraced, crying with relief. Someone shouted, "Justice has been served." I stepped outside the courthouse and saw the same group of people who had waited for me after I gave my statement. They came forward, thanking me, hugging me. "Thank you," they said. "Thank you for the truth." A woman holding a child whispered, "Because of you, we'll receive compensation. We can finally buy something, anything, for our children." I hugged her and cried. For the first time, I felt that everything I had done was not in vain. But at home, emptiness still waited. Andrew still did not call. And Sophia, she was living through her own personal hell. I learned about it from her friend who called me a few days after the trial. "Mrs. Lawson, Sophia asked me to reach out. She doesn't know how to contact you. She's afraid you won't want to talk to her. But she wants to see you." We met in a small cafe on the edge of the city. Sophia arrived pale, with dark circles under her eyes, but there was something new in her gaze, strength. She sat across from me, folded her hands on the table. "Mrs. Lawson, I don't know where to begin," she said quietly. At first I hated you. I thought you destroyed my life, my wedding, my family. I couldn't understand why you did it. I nodded silently, letting her speak. But then the trial started. I heard all those stories. Families who lost everything. Parents with nowhere to live. Children sleeping on floors. And I realized, my father did that. The man I loved, the man I was proud of. He destroyed the lives of hundreds of people. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I met Veronica, Sophia continued. The woman, with his second family. We talked. He told me how he promised to divorce. How he lied to her, to my mother, for years. I met the children. My half-brother and half-sister. They're sweet, innocent. And they're victims too. She wiped her tears and looked at me. You saved me, Mrs. Lawson. If not for you, I would have married without knowing the truth. Later I would have found out, when my father was arrested. And it would have been even worse. And Andrew, he would have been dragged into everything. His name would have been ruined. You protected him. And you protected me too. I took her hand. Sophia, I know how much this hurts. But you're strong. You'll get through this. She nodded. I'm in therapy. Working with a psychologist. I'm learning to accept who my father really was. It's hard to let go of the image of the perfect dad and see the real man. A criminal. A liar. But it's necessary to move on. We talked for another hour. She told me that her mother, Helen Carter, was also struggling. That the divorce had been finalized, the house sold, the money divided. They had rented a small apartment and were starting a new life. Simpler, more modest, but honest. And Andrew? I asked carefully. Sophia gave a weak smile. He's there. Every day. Supporting me however he can. He's rethinking a lot of things too. He says he's slowly starting to understand why you did what you did. My heart trembled. Really? Yes, Sophia nodded. He just needs time. It was a shock for him. A ruined wedding, a scandal, my father's arrest. But he's smart. He sees the bigger picture. And soon I'm sure he'll come to you. We said goodbye outside the cafe. Sophia hugged me tightly. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. I went home with a lighter heart. For the first time in months I felt hope. Sophia was healing. She was accepting the truth. And maybe, just maybe, Andrew would soon take a step toward me too. And while I waited, I kept believing that the truth would eventually overcome every wound. Another 2 weeks passed after my meeting with Sophia. I lived in a state of quiet expectation. Work, home, work again. In the evenings, I sat by the window with a book, unable to focus. My thoughts constantly drifted to Andrew. Was he thinking of me? Did he finally understand why I had done what I did? It was an ordinary March evening. It was already getting dark outside and I was making tea in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. Sharp, unexpected. I flinched, almost dropping the kettle. I walked to the door, looked through the peephole. My heart stopped. Andrew was standing there. I froze, afraid to open the door. What if he had come to end things completely? What if he wanted to say he never wanted to see me again? But then I looked at his face. Pale, exhausted, streaked with dried tears. I opened the door wide. Andrew. He stood on the threshold looking at me. Then he stepped forward and hugged me. Tightly, desperately, like a little boy hugging his mother after a long separation. And he cried. Mom, he sobbed into my shoulder. Mom, forgive me. Forgive me for everything. For the silence, for the anger, for not understanding right away. I stroked his back, crying myself. It's all right, sweetheart. It's all right. I'm not angry. We stood there in the doorway for several minutes, holding each other, crying together. All those months of pain, silence, separation spilled out at once. Then I pulled back gently, took his hand and led him to the kitchen. Sit down. I'll make tea. Andrew sat at the table and wiped his face with his sleeve. I put a cup in front of him and sat across from him. He stayed silent for a long time, gathering his thoughts. Then he finally spoke. Mom, I was such an idiot. When you exposed the truth at the wedding, I thought you ruined my life. I was angry with you. I thought you did it out of spite because you didn't like Victor. I didn't understand. He held the cup with both hands, staring into it. But then the trial began. I went to support Sophia. And I heard God, Mom, I heard all those stories. People crying in the courtroom, telling how Victor destroyed their lives. Families with children left homeless. Elderly people who lost everything. I sat there listening, terrified. He raised his eyes to me. And then you took the stand. You told them why you did it. You said you wanted to protect me. That you couldn't let me enter the family of a criminal. And suddenly I understood. You saved me, Mom. Tears rolled down his cheeks again. If we had gotten married without knowing the truth and then he'd been arrested, I would have been dragged into all of it. My name, my reputation, my career, they'd all be in danger. They'd suspect me of helping him. Interrogate me. I could have lost my job. Maybe even become part of the investigation. I took his hand. I couldn't let that happen, Andrew. He squeezed my hand in return. Mom, forgive me. Forgive me for not calling. For being angry. For not understanding sooner. You did the hardest thing. You risked our relationship for my future. And I was blind. I hugged him again, pulling him close. It's all behind us, sweetheart. The important thing is that you're here. That you understand. We talked late into the night. Andrew told me how he and Sophia had been getting through the nightmare together. How Sophia was slowly accepting the truth about her father. How they were supporting each other. You know, Mom, he said thoughtfully, all of this showed me who Sophia really is. She could have broken down, run away from everything, blamed you or me. But she stayed. Tried to understand. Worked on herself. She's strong. I love her even more for that. I smiled. She's a good girl, Andrew. None of this is her fault. I know, he nodded. And we decided to get married. For real this time. No show, no luxury. No 200 guests, no crystal chandeliers. Just us, our loved ones, and love. A month later, on a warm April day, Andrew Lawson and Sophia Carter had their real wedding. A small church on the outskirts of the city. The same one where they were wed the first time. But everything felt different now. There were only 20 guests. My relatives, Andrew's close friends, Sophia's friends, her mother Helen Carter. No luxury. Simple white flowers, modest outfits, genuine smiles. Sophia wore a plain white dress without embroidery or crystals. Andrew wore an ordinary suit. But when they stood at the altar and looked into each other's eyes, I saw true happiness. The priest blessed them, they exchanged rings. And when he said, "You may kiss the bride," the whole room applauded. Quietly, warmly, with love. After the ceremony, we gathered in a little cafe. One long table, homemade food, simple toasts. Helen stood up and said, "I want to thank everyone who is here today. This has been the hardest year of my life. I lost my family, my illusions, my old life. But I gained the truth. And I learned to appreciate what is real, not what is for show." She turned to Sophia and Andrew. "You've been through hell. But you stood your ground. And now you're starting a new life. An honest one without lies. I wish you happiness and love." Then Sophia stood up. She lifted her glass and looked toward me. "Mrs. Lawson," she began, her voice trembling, "I want to thank you. When you revealed the truth at that wedding, I thought you ruined my life. But in reality, you saved it." Tears streamed down her face. "You showed me who my father truly was. Yes, it hurt. Yes, my world collapsed. But it's better to learn the truth now than to live in a beautiful lie. You taught me that honesty is more important than comfort. That the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than deception." She walked over, hugged me. "Thank you for being so brave. Thank you for protecting Andrew. And protecting me too." I hugged her back, crying with happiness. "I simply couldn't do anything else, sweetheart." Sophia held me even tighter. "Now I understand. And I want you to know, I want to learn from you. To be as strong and honest as you." Andrew came over and hugged both of us. The three of us stood there, and I felt that everything had finally fallen into place. That evening the newlyweds left for a short honeymoon, just a few days in a small seaside town. No foreign resorts, no luxury. Just peace, quiet, and the two of them. When they returned, Andrew said to me, "Mom, this was the best wedding of my life. The real one." I smiled. Because it was built on the truth, sweetheart. The newlyweds rented a small 2-bedroom apartment. Simple but cozy. Sophia started working at an architecture firm. Andrew continued working as an engineer. They lived simply but happily. I often visited them. We drank tea, talked, laughed. Sophia called me Mom, and every time I heard it, my heart filled with warmth. One evening they invited me over for dinner. I arrived and saw the table beautifully set. Candles, flowers, their favorite dishes. "What's the occasion?" I asked, smiling. Sophia and Andrew exchanged glances. Then Sophia took my hand. "Mrs. Lawson, we have news." I froze. "I'm pregnant," Sophia whispered, her face glowing. "We're expecting a baby." I gasped with joy and hugged them both. "Oh my goodness. This is wonderful. I'm going to be a grandmother." Andrew laughed, wrapping his arms around us. "Yeah, Mom. You're going to be a grandmother. And we want you with us, helping, supporting, teaching our child everything you taught me. Honesty, courage, kindness." I cried with happiness. Everything we had gone through, all the pain, all the trials, they led us here. To this moment. To a new life. To a new beginning. That evening I went home and sat by the window. I looked at the stars and thought, life is a strange thing. Sometimes, to protect the people you love, you have to break their world. Cause pain to prevent a greater disaster. But if you act out of love, if your intentions are pure, the truth always wins. And happiness comes to those who are not afraid to face it. Sophia's pregnancy went smoothly. I was by her side almost every day, helping with shopping, supporting her when things were hard, cooking. We became truly close, like mother and daughter. One evening, as we sat in the kitchen drinking tea, Sophia suddenly asked, "Mom, what kind of person do you think our child will grow up to be?" I smiled. "Kind, honest, strong. Because that's who you and Andrew are. And because you'll teach your child the right things." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "I want our child to never fear the truth. To know that lies are poison, they destroy lives. I saw that with my father." She placed her hand on her stomach. "I want our child to grow up understanding that honesty is the foundation of everything. Even when it hurts, it's still better than lies." I took her hand. "And that's exactly how your child will grow up, sweetheart. Because you understand that." At the end of December, when the first snow covered the city, Sophia gave birth. A boy. Healthy, strong, loud, crying, with dark hair. Andrew Lawson called me from the hospital, and when I heard the happiness in his voice, I started crying myself. "Mom, we have a son. A boy. He's perfect." "Congratulations," I whispered through tears. "What will you name him?" Andrew paused. "Michael," he said quietly. "After the priest who married us. The one who blessed our new beginning. Michael is a protector, an archangel. We want our son to be just that, strong, fair, a defender of truth." I smiled through tears. A beautiful name. When Sophia was discharged, I came to visit them. Little Michael lay in his crib, breathing softly, his tiny fists curled. I picked him up and he opened his eyes, dark just like his father's. "Hello, sweetheart," I whispered. "I'm your grandma. And I promise you this, you will grow up surrounded by truth and love." The first months of motherhood were hard for Sophia. I helped however I could, came every day, stayed with Michael while she rested, taught her how to manage things. One evening, after Michael finally fell asleep, Sophia sat next to me on the couch. "You know, Mom," she said softly, "I keep thinking about my father. About how he's in prison while his grandson is growing up here. Sometimes it makes me sad. After all, he was my father." I nodded. "That's normal, sweetheart. No matter what happened, he's still your father. And you have every right to feel sad." Sophia wiped away a tear. "But I don't want Michael to grow up knowing his grandfather is a criminal. I want to protect him from that. When he grows up," I said gently, "you'll tell him the truth. And you'll add that people make mistakes. Terrible, unforgivable mistakes. But that doesn't mean you have to hate them. You just have to understand and learn not to repeat their path." Sophia nodded. "You're right." A few months passed. Michael was already 6 months old when Sophia received a letter. From her father. From prison. He came to my home holding the letter. Pale-shaken. "He wrote me," she said, handing me the envelope. "I don't know if I should read it." I'm scared. I took her hand. If you're scared, don't read it. But if you feel you need this to heal, read it. Sophia sat down, stared at the envelope for a long time, then opened it with trembling hands and began reading aloud. The letter was long. Victor wrote that he had spent his whole life afraid of being nobody. That he grew up poor, hungry, humiliated. That when he began earning money he felt power, and it intoxicated him. He wanted more and more. He wanted everyone to see him as someone important, significant, wealthy. I built false greatness, Sophia. I bought cars, houses, expensive things. Not because I needed them, but because I wanted people to look at me with envy. I lied, stole, destroyed lives, and I never stopped. Because I was terrified of becoming that poor boy again. He wrote that he regretted everything. That he understood the pain he caused, to her, to Helen, to hundreds of families, to his children with Veronica. That for the first time in years he saw himself clearly, pathetic, weak, broken. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. But I want you to know this. I am proud of you. You did not become like me. You chose truth, love, honesty. You are stronger than I ever was. And I am grateful to the woman, Mrs. Lawson, who stopped me. Who saved you from living inside my lies. Sophia finished reading and burst into tears. I hugged her, stroking her hair. He finally admitted his guilt, she whispered. He finally did. That's an important step, I said. For him and for you. Sophia wiped her tears. You know, I forgive him. Not for him but for myself. To release the pain. To move on. But it doesn't mean I'll forget or justify what he did. I nodded. That is true forgiveness, sweetheart. To let go but never excuse. A few more months passed. Michael turned 1 year old. A lively little boy who had already started walking and babbling his first words. Then one day Sophia called me, her voice excited and nervous. Mom, I received an invitation to the Women Entrepreneurs Conference. They want me to give a speech about my experience, how I survived the crisis and began a new life. And I want you to be there. I want people to hear your story. I hesitated. Sophia, I don't know. It's public. Everyone will be watching. That's exactly why it matters, she insisted. Your story deserves to be heard. You showed what real courage is. What it means to protect the people you love no matter what. The conference was held in a large hall at the City Civic Center. Several hundred women, entrepreneurs, activists, community leaders. I sat in the front row, nervous, twisting a handkerchief in my hands. Sophia Carter walked onto the stage. She looked beautiful, confident, strong. Nothing like the frightened girl I had seen at that terrible wedding. She began to speak. She talked about her childhood in a wealthy family, about living inside the illusion of a perfect life, about the wedding that turned into a nightmare, about exposing her father, about the pain, the shock, the destruction. I lost everything, she said, and the room fell silent. My family, my illusions, my old life. But I gained the truth. And that truth saved me. She turned toward me. There is a woman in this room who changed my life. Mrs. Lawson, please stand. I stood up, confused. Every head in the hall turned toward me. This woman, Sophia continued, her voice shaking, saved my life. She revealed the truth about my father when no one else dared to. She destroyed my wedding to protect me and her son from future suffering. She sacrificed her relationship with her son to keep him safe. The room stirred. Someone started applauding. She showed me that truth is the foundation of love. That honesty matters more than comfort. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Sophia stepped down from the stage, walked toward me and hugged me. Thank you, Mom. For everything. The hall erupted in applause. Women stood up, clapping, shouting words of support. Several approached me afterward, thanking me, hugging me, saying that my story inspired them. One woman, around 40, came to me with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said. My husband has been lying to me for years. I know it, but I'm afraid to say anything. Afraid to destroy my family. But after your story I realized, silence means betraying myself. I'm going to tell the truth. No matter how scary it is. I hugged her. Be strong. The truth sets you free. That day I understood. My story had become something bigger than a family drama. It became an example for others. For women who were afraid to speak. For mothers who protect their children. For anyone choosing truth over convenient lies. And it was worth it. Every tear, every painful moment, every trial. Because truth always wins. After the conference, my life changed. I never expected that what I had lived through would resonate so deeply with others. People began calling, writing. Women from different cities shared their stories. Some tolerated their husbands cheating for years out of fear of being alone. Some endured domestic violence for the sake of their children. Some ignored lies in their families to keep up the appearance of stability. One woman wrote me a long letter. Her husband had been defrauding his business partners. She knew but stayed silent because she feared losing her comfortable life. After hearing my story, she decided to tell the truth. He was held accountable, their marriage ended, but she said, "For the first time in years I can sleep peacefully. Because I no longer live in a lie." Another woman said her father had lied to her mother for years, and she kept quiet to avoid destroying the family. Now she finally talked to her mother, who filed for divorce. "You showed me that silence is also betrayal. Betrayal of yourself and of the people you love," she wrote. I read those letters and cried. I never imagined that my pain, my choice, my decision would become something greater than a personal story. It became a symbol that truth matters more than fear. Sophia also began receiving invitations to different events. She told our story, spoke about the importance of honesty, about how lies destroy lives. People listened, recorded, shared her speeches online. One day she said to me, "Mom, do you know what I realized? Our pain wasn't meaningless. We walked through hell, but now we help others avoid going through the same. Or at least help them find strength to get out of it." I hugged her. "You're a wise girl, Sophia." 2 more years passed. Michael turned 3 years old. A cheerful, curious little boy with his father's dark eyes and his mother's kindness. I spent a lot of time with him, walking in the park, reading books, drawing. And then one day Sophia and Andrew invited me to a family dinner. Again the special table. Candles, flowers. "We have news," Andrew said, smiling. Sophia took my hand. "Mom, we're expecting our second child. A girl." I gasped with joy and hugged both of them. "That's wonderful. Another grandchild, a granddaughter." Sophia smiled through tears. "And we've already chosen a name. If you don't mind, we want to name her Margaret. In your honor." I froze. Tears streamed down my cheeks. "You want to name her?" "Yes," Sophia nodded. "You changed our lives. You showed us what real strength, courage, and love mean. We want our daughter to carry your name. To grow up knowing about the woman who wasn't afraid to speak the truth no matter what." I hugged them, crying from happiness and gratitude. "This is the greatest gift you could have given me." 9 months flew by. And on a sunny May day little Meg was born. Tiny, dark-haired, with huge eyes. When I held her in the hospital, she opened her eyes and looked at me. I whispered, "Hello, sweetheart. You carry my name. And I hope you grow up strong, honest, and brave. I hope you never fear the truth." In the first weeks after Meg's birth, I visited often. Helped Sophia, spent time with the kids, told Michael stories while their mother fed his baby sister. One evening, when both children were asleep, I sat at the table writing a letter. Sophia noticed. "What are you writing, Mom?" "A letter," I said. "For little Meg. She'll read it when she grows up." Sophia sat beside me. "May I listen?" I nodded and began reading aloud what I had written. "My dear little Margaret, when you read this letter you will already be grown. And you will know our story. The story of how your grandmother ruined her son's wedding to protect him. A story of pain, fear, silence, and truth. I want you to remember one thing. Truth always wins. Even if it hurts. Even if it destroys what once seemed strong. Because lies are a foundation of sand. Sooner or later, everything built on them collapses. Choose truth even when you're afraid. When you stay silent, you protect the lie. When you speak, you protect life. Yours, your loved ones, the people around you. Be brave, sweetheart. Don't be afraid to be inconvenient. Don't be afraid to break what was built on deception. Because real happiness, real love, and real family can only stand on truth. I love you. Your grandmother, Margaret. Sophia cried as she listened. It's beautiful, she whispered. She'll treasure this letter for her whole life. I folded it, placed it in an envelope, and wrote, "To Margaret. Open when you turn 18. Several more years passed. Michael turned 6, little Meg turned 3. I stayed close to them, helping, supporting, teaching. One warm summer day I was walking with Michael in the park. We fed ducks by the pond. He laughed, ran around, told me stories from preschool. Then we sat on a bench to rest. Michael swung his legs, licking his ice cream, and suddenly asked, "Grandma, are you a hero?" I looked at him in surprise. "Why do you think that, sweetheart?" He shrugged. "Mom said you saved Dad and her. That you were really brave. So that means you're a hero, right?" I smiled and stroked his head. "You know, Michael, a hero isn't someone who wears a cape and flies. A hero is someone who protects their family. Who tells the truth even when it's hard. Who does what's right, even if everyone around is against them." Michael thought for a moment, chewing his ice cream. "Then you are a hero," he said seriously. "Because Mom said it was really hard for you. But you still did the right thing." I hugged him tightly. "If a hero is someone who protects their family, then yes, Michael. I'm a hero. And you can be a hero too. Just always tell the truth. Protect the people you love. Don't be afraid to be brave." Michael nodded. "I'll remember, Grandma." We sat on the bench watching the pond. Ducks swam, children played nearby, sunlight flickered through the trees. And I felt peace. True, deep peace. Truth had won. As the price was high. Months of silence with my son. Pain. Tears. A shattered wedding. But now, years later, I could see the result. Andrew and Sophia were happy. They lived in honesty and love. Their children grew up learning that truth is the foundation of life. Victor was serving his sentence. But at least he had admitted his guilt. The families he had harmed received compensation and justice. And my story became an example for other women who no longer feared to speak. I did what I had to do. And I regretted nothing. That evening I came home, sat by the window with a cup of tea, and took out an old photograph. The one where little Andrew hugs me. I smiled. "We made it, sweetheart," I whispered. "We went through all of it and stayed together. Because love and truth are always stronger than lies." And I knew our story would live on. In the hearts of my grandchildren. In the lives of the people who heard it. In everyone who chooses truth over convenient lies. Because truth is not just words. It is a force that changes the world. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. Tell us in the comments which moment touched you the most. Was it when Mrs. Lawson stood up with the microphone? Or when Andrew returned and asked for forgiveness? Or maybe when little Michael asked, "Grandma, are you a hero?" Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss new stories about strength, love, and dignity. Like this video if you believe that truth is always stronger than lies. And a mother's courage can save an entire family. And before you go, watch the story we left here on the screen. We're sure it will also make you think about what truly matters in life and touch your heart. See you in the next story.